Right. So, welcome everyone to the 36th by the test drive. This is in collaboration with Browserstack, and we have a very special speaker for you. This is Ashwini. She's a senior manager at Nimblework, and it's lovely to have you all on a weekend, a long weekend for a lot of you. So, thank you so much. So, just beginning with this meetup, we right? We love to thank BrowserStack because they essentially make all of this possible. The largest community that we manage, the 150 events that we do in a year, our courses, our workshops, our boot camps, and now our corporate training vertical is all supported through our partnership with BrowserStack. So a huge shout out to them. Short video that we'll be playing right now, just so that in case you aren't of BrowserStack already, we have a short introduction about it.
BrowserStack began in 2011 with a bold vision. It has grown into the world's leading cloud testing platform. From launching automated testing in 35 plus countries and 700 plus engineers, driving AI innovation across 30 plus
Sure. Mention that we'll see how we can resolve them. Any questions you can use the Q&A tab. We'll be posting polls in the middle as well, so you can vote on that. You can put it on the right side of your screen. So just thinking about us, we're the largest community in the world that turned tech startup now. We started in 2018. Give testing the glory it deserves. It's always played fiddle to say development, programming, engineering. We're on the mission to create smarter, prouder, and confident testers. We're we take pride in solving upskilling and growth for global testing professionals, and we're offering courses, members, cohorts, offline mixers, online community spaces, and a lot of global events. Right, our offering enables software testers to collaborate, learn, and grow together. So we've done over 430 plus software testing events across conferences, hackathons, meetups, webinars, and with community initiatives, we're reaching a global of 120K plus. Intend to provide life-altering growth to every professional on the planet through community and technology. Quickly, there's a PhD leaders, which for the future from Ajay. This is on the 20th and 21st of September, 4 p.m. onwards. We also have a corporate training vertical that started recently. Our huge community size gives us access to the largest QA talent across the globe. This includes both trainers as well as actual practitioners who can come into your team and teach you on any possible topic, testing in engineering, DevOps, you name it, we can probably put you with the right educator. We have the largest conferences in the world that's coming up. This is called Splits. This is the world's leading software testing conference. This will be from October 2025. There are 40 plus speakers, 10 plus themes, 20,000 plus signups over 2 days, and people from 120 plus countries will be joining. So, just very quick, the speaker, we have Ashwini here. The of product quality and the Sir of Posh IC at Nimblework. She has 24 years of expertise. She's an test evangelist and mentor, and where she champions agile testing and continuous improvement. She's Bits Pilani, and she actively engages in tech conferences. That's where I met Ashwini for the first time about a month ago now at a Mumbai meetup. So beyond her personally passionate about urban farming and sustainability, and she advocates for women's health and well-being. Is a constant supporter for gender equality as well. So I'll bring Ashwini on the stage.
Hi everyone, I'm audible.
Ashwini, can you say something?
I can hear you. You guys can hear me?
Oh, okay. Ashwini, is anyone able to hear Ashwini?
Hello.
Okay, fair. Okay, all right, all right. No
I'm audible.
problem. I think everyone can hear you, Ashwini. So
Okay.
we can go ahead with the session. I'll share your screen as well. And
All right. We'll get started. Okay. Hi everyone. Good morning, good evening, and welcome to this session on accelerating agile hands-on BDD to scenario generation using GenAI. So this is actually a half a day workshop, and I'll try and see how best I can cover most of the stuff in an hour session. So there are a few exercises which I can browse through, and depending upon how we get the response, we can have a follow-up session where we can have much more hands-on. This can be an overview of fundamentals and basics, and then accordingly we can elaborate it further. So in the given era, if you see, like if at all there are quality issues or defect problems, there are two primary areas to look at. One is upstream and the other one is downstream, which is more execution oriented. And if you see today with the advent of AI, code generators, code checkers, and dependency checkers, and so many things happening, a lot of innovation happening over there, we find that the downstream issues are being taken care of. The defect problem has been taken care of. There's less of problems on that side. But if you really look at now, the role of testing team has to morph into looking at the upstream issues. Upstream issues, I mean, it is more to understand what business wants to deliver, what is the behavior of the business, and what are possibilities when we are trying to get that behavior understood to the downstream teams. Because it is more human centric, it needs much more human participation and human collaboration, and that's where BDD comes into play. So there are many stalwarts in the area: Dan North, Goko Edzik, John Ferguson Smart, Seb Rose, and Gaspar Nagy. They have been working in this area for last so many years, under various different pretexts like ATDD, BDD, specification by example, and these terms are used interchangeably with some differentiation. But most importantly, they've been working in this area of BDD practices. When we started our own journey of implementing BDD for multiple different teams, there were few hardships. We got over those, started from reading their books and implementing small different practices to really gaining the correct insight into philosophy of BDD, and then really deriving the ROI if that is followed in a proper way. So I would like to share some of my experiences, and we can go over some of the questions in terms of how we can roll it out from scratch, or there are always org specific, domain specific constraints, or team specific constraint, the management approval, whether we can start with BDD, or how do we go about if that buy-in is not there. And there are so many different possibilities depending upon team to team. So while we go over the basics and fundamentals, we'll try to see if some of these questions get answered. So without any further delay, I am Ashwini Lalit, and Anurag has already introduced me. So I've been working as Senior Manager Quality Engineering at Nimblework, and I enjoy rolling out BDD practice and continuous. Let's begin with a short story. This story is about discussion of business requirements that Peter has started. And Peter is a product owner of a pizza store, and he wants to disseminate one of the user story. He's been preparing them for the discussion. There's Devin who represents the development team, and there's Tessie over there who represents the testing team. So they want to motivate new customers with a great deal. And so Peter suggests that first time orders, we start giving 20% discount. And the order total should go above $30 when we will enable these kind of discounts. Immediately, there's Devin who has to quickly say, okay, this is a very simple implementation. All I need to do is formula and calculation should be done. Doesn't seem to be a bigger story or so. Tessie starts imagining that, okay, I'll have to browse through the shopping cart, where will I see the discount, and then when the final calculation will be done, how many automation scripts will be affected, and what all changes will come. So if you look at the discussion, each team tries to think from their perspective in terms of deliverable what they need to give. Whereas Peter, who is customer centric, is trying to put forth a business problem that they are trying to solve and motivate the customer by giving some business context. Now, in order to rope in rest of the members to think about the business, empathize about what they're trying to deliver, you really need to ask them some more questions, enable some more collaboration. So Peter moves further and says, guys, I've put down a happy path. Let's say the order is $60. And when we apply this 20% discount, its total is going to be $48. Do you think, are there any additional scenarios or so? Both of them start pondering and they say, I think so, there can be. Even give the discount if the order total is exactly $30. Okay, good question. Tessie starts bringing in that, what about combo packs and so on and so on. Then the conversation really picks up. Where we see that each team brings to table a different perspective when discussing these kind of business requirements. And this is a table wherein the technical team come back with some technical feasibility to say how much can be delivered in the constraint of resources and bandwidth. And it aligns with the immediate deliverable that needs to go to market. At the same time, testing team members can really provide insights into alternative flows, exceptional flows, and then bring to table in terms of, okay, if certain things don't work, should we consider it giving in the second MVP, or how do we go about it if we try to put it in the current scope or so. So those kind of discussions are supposed to happen, which actually breaks the silo, makes things far more feasible, and ensure that truly speaking, the functionality when it goes live, it gives the business success. So how many of you are aware of BDD or have practiced some kind of BDD prior to this session? Just a quick raise of hands. Anurag, somehow I don't see the chat window, but if you can.
Yes, Ashwin. So
Okay.
a couple of people saying yes right now, and they have
Okay.
used. Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. So BDD is about conversations. BDD is about having these conversations with the help of structured examples, primarily because what we are trying to do is we are going to explain the strategic scope to the team that is actually going to deliver it, and the teams they have not seen the domain to the extent the strategy teams have seen it. So it's so very essential for which is and the knowledge levels of the teams who are actually going to build that. And just imagine when that kind of empathy and devotion is present, ask and urge for information is present, then the translation of those ideas will really take in the shape what goes to market and gives fantastic results. So how do we get this conversation happening is what BDD enables. BDD as a concept was found by Dan North, who was a technologist, and he wanted to improve the business communication amongst his team members, and that's how he came with this concept of BDD. So it's so much to do with converting these ideas, converting these stories in terms of examples to make it far more understandable to the downstream teams. Session is going to be that enable BDD as a practice. Information I've picked up from Rose and Gaspernagi's book on discovery and formulation. It's a must-read book, I'll say, for those of you who want to start practicing BDD, because it explains with some beautiful examples as to what are those niggling points which actually doesn't allow those kind of conversations to happen, and then how do you get over those problems. So discovery, the first part is about having these structured conversation, and it helps to uncover the ambiguities. Whereas if we don't deliberate these kind of discussions in the beginning when we take the scope, there's an accidental discovery of the scope while when the sprint picks up, and that actually derails your release or it interrupts the roadmap. So it's essential to deliberate requirement. No doubt there's going to be some more information handling that will happen, unknowns will come up, but the impact will be far more lesser because the team is enabled to accommodate those kind of impacts, and they have understood the background and they can empathize with changing requirements. Then comes the part that once the discovery has established fair bit of examples, you want to put down these examples in terms of some DSL, some domain specific language. Gherkin is generally used, but it's not mandatory. Gherkin given when then English like syntaxes or it's an automation language. But more than anything else, what we do is extract business vocabulary out of examples we have discovered in the first pass. And that's the reason formulation is a creative writing process. We make it very brittle by just saying ki, okay, we just have to write some given when then syntaxes, and it just misses the purpose that has been achieved out of discovery if the formulation is not well practiced. So we'll look at the second pass, which will be formulation. Now, once we have these scenarios and this DSL formed, this business vocabulary formed, what we do is we play back this business vocabulary against the live application. Now, in order to do that, test automation and any kind of testing tool, automated testing tool allows you to do that kind of a playback. So automation comes into picture. But it is not that for each and every automation you start writing some scenarios and that becomes BDD. We have captured certain examples, formulated a business vocabulary, and then we do a playback against the application, validates our examples against the live application so that it can be versioned. So everything has its own place and automation becomes incidental. So that's basically our agenda. And towards the end, what we will see once the basics and fundamentals have been revised, we will go over GenAI, So how it can be leveraged so that it can bring in efficiency in each and every phase that can really help you build scenarios much quickly than starting from scratch. But it's essential that those prompts have the right kind of keywords. It has the right kind of context, which actually refines the way each and every phase can be well executed. So without any, our first BDD, that is discovery. Well practiced with the help of an example mapping technique. Matt Tween invented example mapping technique, and he invented this low-tech, very simple method which enables powerful conversations. There are sticky notes, and these sticky notes quickly help the team collaborate. You scratch certain examples, you highlight certain additional examples on the sticky notes, collaborate with each other. Thus, it gives a structure to the discussion. And what it helps is that if a user story has got too many pointers accumulated, then it's time to break that user story in the two pieces right in the beginning of the scope, which helps you focus on each piece in a much better fashion. So if I have to say that we follow solid principles when we start programming, right? So that we know we have single objective concern and patterns applied to that. When you do the example mapping part for a user story, it enables you to apply those kind of best practices to user story dissemination. What you do, put a user story right on the top on a yellow sticky card, and put down the user story name, and then you are nothing but it logically groups. Examples are, and grouping of examples is cool. So if I have to say in a programming language, if you guys have worked with, let's say, object oriented programming, and you define classes, right? Classes are abstract, and when you create objects, you actually put down the data in those objects. Some similar strategy is present over here. Rules are abstract information, constraints within the bounds of which the user story is going to flourish, the user story is going to behave. And then we give some concrete examples for each of those rules so that we know and understand the user story in a better fashion. Anything unanswered, we park it and put it as question. So we take the example that Peter was explaining, and let's dive deeper to understand what a good rule is. If you look at a rule is nothing but a generic system behavior mentioned in the user story. So if we go back to Peter's example, what is first time order? First time order is basically an order that doesn't have any history records. Example has three parts: context, action, and outcome. Outcome is something for which this user story exists. The whole purpose why we are starting development of this story is to achieve multiple outcomes, and every example will elaborate that kind of information. So if an example basically the outcome that we were trying to see here is basically getting this 20% discount, right? So context, action, and outcome. So sometimes it is so possible that you're trying to figure out examples. You may not be able to truly find out what is action or a context and an outcome. What you want to do is write down, let's say if you know that, okay, I'm going to achieve 20% discount, just put down that outcome. And now think backward to find what action will give 20% discount. So then you say, okay, it's the first time order which is supposed to have 20% discount. And what defines the first time order? What is the context when the first time? It's the first sign up or no previous history record. That what defines the first time order. Sometimes it is the other way around. Most of the team members are aware of what the action has to be done. But how does it correlate the outcome to the user story is something that you need to ponder, think, go over the literature that has been circulated, and then come back with this kind of a format. So what we'll do is we'll story that Peter had started, that first time orders get 20% off when the order total is above $30. So we can start elaborating rules one by one. One more thing which I would like to just share with you all. If the teams are distributed, you can still practice example mapping in a very good way, because there are multiple different tools which are available. There's Excel draw that helps in that manner. Then there's a mind map that also is another good tool. One thing that I can do is I can share one of the Excel draw session with you all, so that 1 second, let me again just bring this up. You can just type exceldraw.com and you'll be able to see this screen. And I can share this with you all, so you can just give it a try. I'll put this in chat. So you can simply add the user story card and keep adding rules and examples in this fashion. So if the teams are distributed, you can start the sticky notes on this particular website. One second. So this is another rule. Start putting that rule, and then you can start thinking what all possibilities exist. Right? So this is on Excel draw. Something similar you can do on mind map as well. Let me just bring this up here. Mind map is another free tool. Also help quickly user story, rules, and examples, and just start elaborating it in that manner. And just drag drop here. If I just say selected the user story, you just say add, and you start putting another rule over here and start elaborating the rule. So either mind map or Excel draw, most of these tools can be used. Now, in the interest of time, what I'll do though, we can take a quick chat as to, if you were to define rules, can you just ping some of the rules in the chat window? What are the rules for this user story that you can think of? Okay, so what I want you all to do is put down the rules for this particular user story in the chat. You can practice on Excel draw or so, but we have audio since the beginning. But I hope it's clearer now, right? Okay, just going through some chat messages.
Yeah, the audio is fine now.
Okay, so what I would like you all to do is mention some of the rules that this story should conform to, or this story will behave within the context of those rules. Can you ping these rules in chat? So one of the rule we just saw in the previous slide, right? There should be no history records for if the 20% discount has to be enabled. Can you guys think of some more examples like that? What defines first time order? So we have to question these. We have to question the user story to try and find the rules. So when we say first time order, get 20% off. What is a first time order? how is 20% on what total the 20% is calculated, and how the threshold is calculated, how is the discount calculated. So when you question the user story for it, you can start putting down those additional rules. Very good, some great examples. When order value is below $30, it should not apply discount. That is an example. You're trying to get deeper into the example of threshold calculation. Then household level or individual level, that can be one, correct? We need to check that with the product owner. Order history has at least one order, correct? Right. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to find the bounds of the story as to how the story should conform to. Let's go ahead and look at like first time order is a new sign up, right? So here we have elaborated that if a new email sign up happens and places an order above $30, then there should be a discount. If the user has already registered but has cancelled the first order, still eligible for discount, right? So even that case exists, and we can clarify with the product owner and then how does the threshold. So pre-delivery order, so it means that delivery charges will not be considered when we are trying to apply the discount. Similarly, multiple items put together and on the total items value is what we will apply the discount. So it elaborates the behavior of the application, how the threshold will get calculated. Now let's look at some of the examples. So $30 order, then 20% discount. You pay, which is basic combo example. We have combo offers which are already there in place for the application. So combo offers, whether we will be applying discount, because it will be anyways reduced amount compared to a single item. So these kind of examples, when you put forth, the product team and the dev team and the test team, they know that they are trying to find the boundaries of these user stories. There can be many more rules, but then you have to question, do I need to consider those rules as part of the current scope of the story? Or is it belonging to some other story? Right? Like for example, if we have to talk about authentication part, does authentication really matter over here? It's the first time sign up, or if I come through single sign on, something like that, which is scope of some other story. It has to be in place. If it is not thought of, then it becomes like a properly focused story where you elaborate the rules of authentication, right? So anything that is unanswered, then you park it, like here in this case, it's promo coupons and the rounding errors. How will it be taken? I mean, whether you want to show them the decimal points and so on. Okay. So that's how you elaborate a typical best practices that we should be following when we go for exam process. See, the moment you get into conversation, there's always a time limit and how much you can stretch these conversations. And at times what I've found is that either it gets digressed into some different discussion, or it pollutes the user story description otherwise which was written if you don't stick to the scope. And there are certain norms that you follow in such collaborative discussions. So prepare well. You should be circulating the information before you come for this kind of example mapping discussion. And potential examples, edge cases that each team can think for themselves, and each participant has the relevant context before they join the call. Then comes the part. Then you need to make sure that these sessions are generally conducted 1 or 2 hours, not more than that, because then it becomes a boring discussion. There's a lot of creativity when you discuss the business scope, possibilities of business, how the end user is going to look at from the context of this particular story. The moment it gets stretched into hours and hours of discussion, It depends upon the tempo of the team, how much they can stretch. And every other story begins with a high tempo, and then it the fire dows away, and the correct details don't get captured. So generally, it is said that if you have daily stand-ups, after the stand-up 1 hour discussion, prepare for the upstream, the N+1 sprint. So you know that you have done justice to the user story, not in the middle of the current sprint deliverables. Your current sprint is always loaded. You have pressure of delivering depending upon fortnightly or monthly or whatever quarterly releases and so on. And you know that when you have something at execution, your mind is not free to think creatively for something which is going to be like thinking of possibilities. So grooming call for N+1 for all the cards which have been thought of. Take 1 or 2 cards on daily basis, half an hour to 1 hour discussion after daily stand-ups. It takes less time and you have better visibility, better context getting captured in the stories. Now, when you have teams and multiple members, there's possibility of conflict. So there are different best practices over here. You encourage active listening, focus on the goal of the story. Then there can be a neutral facilitator who can, or you can give turns for the facilitator, and anything that goes that doesn't have immediate answer, what needs to be done, park it as a red sticky. So focus on the 70-80%, the best part of the story, move ahead. Park the other things which needs much more difficult discussions. Then again, these are not test case writing discussions. If we start getting too ingrained into boundary value analysis and equivalence partitioning and finding the depth of the story to that extent, it will derail the business aspect of the story. So you have to watch for that. Stop the discussion if it is not going anywhere. And the outcome of the discussion. It's simpler on your execution board cards. Just pen down all your findings. If you're doing it on sticky notes and an example map, take a screenshot, put it as an attachment on the card. So you know that all the downstream teams, whenever they pick up, they have the right context as to why you did not take some of the aspect of why you have underlined and said that these are must-have aspects of these stories. So it helps ensure has bought into and the context of that particular story. Having established the scope, we are actually running behind the time actually. I'll go through the formulation piece a bit faster and pause me if you want me to elaborate on any of said the initial part. Formulation is about translating our examples that we have identified in the discovery process and putting down in terms of scenarios. You can use Gherkin for it, but the true beauty is about developing the business vocabulary. It is about defining that domain language, which will be helpful to your dev members, your test members to define the proper nomenclature that they use when they define, let's say, API structure, or when they define your classes, variables, any conversation that something is working, not working, you're talking the business language. Rather than giving it a very brittle structure of DOM elements or page element, and I'm navigating to this menu, doing that operation and so on, when each and every person starts talking in terms of business vocabulary, it brings in a very different level of buy-in and understanding in terms of what calls can be taken when something can be delivered, something cannot be delivered. So let's understand. So for those of you who have never, I'll be using Gherkin and given Vendan syntaxes, but I want you all to take home the idea of how scenarios have been thought and churned out of the examples that we have established in the example mapping process. And most of this information you can find very well put in the formulation book by Sebros and Gaspanaghi. For people who have never ever worked with or putting down any form. So let's take a very simple rule, that is count of remaining slices And an example of it is, if the pizza is cut into 10 slices, we pick up 2, 8 slices should remain. So the context, action, outcome translates into the given, when, then. The rule of the example translates into the, so that it becomes explanatory, and when this particular scenario runs against the live application, you talk the same language. Now, scenarios also can be elaborated. Now, the rule is, let's say, describe what remains of a pizza. There can be different possibilities. So I have seen people who have worked with BDD. I have seen data tables which have 30, 40 columns and 10, 20 rows. And there's so much of literature so that you can serve your step definition well. And you have multiple ands and multiple things, which actually removes the intent of the scenario. But what it ends up happening, it is a automated scenario which only automation team understands. Nobody else in the world will ever understand, and debugging also will be done by exactly the same tester who has written it. That defeats the purpose of BDD. It's not BDD, it's some kind of a myth that yes, we are following BDD and writing Gherkin, but it is not BDD, though it is a Gherkin, and it is a working version also, but it's some chaos which might erupt someday. So when you write formulation, and mind you, you are writing when the application is not ready. We are going from discovery to writing scenarios and keeping the scenarios ready when the story is going to be given to downstream teams that they can start building it. So in the absence of application, what do? You write down the business literature properly, and that's exactly what we are doing. You should add a description definitely if you're planning to use outline tables. And what you do generally in the outline tables is that you put down the variables that iterate through these possibilities. And every row has some business purpose. Only then you add a row. And another good trick is, if you start copy pasting scenarios, it's better to use data tables, because you're trying to do the variation of the same scenario, or you're trying to do the variation of the same rule. So scenario or too rudimentary, a balance. So if the example mapping is done well, your scenario chaos can be avoided. So let's look at one application, which is the pizza delivery application, and it has this pizza catalog scenario, right? The scenario name is order test. The time is 11, and the customer goes to this pizza, searches for something, then checks out. There are instructions. We are filling in a lot of details in terms of number of things that, so that the order can be submitted. And finally, success message, you don't see the error message, and then the collection time is mentioned over there, right? These are real world scenarios. So I'm sure people who've been practicing BDD would have definitely written these kind of scenarios. And do you think there's something wrong with this scenario? Can start mentioning in the chat if you see. Or yeah, this is what is real world scenario, and how do we apply best practices when the real world really demands so much of information entry in the application, right? So any guesses, like are there problems with this scenario, or it's good to have scenario, and how do we apply formulation best practices here? Any comments here? What is the purpose of this scenario? If you have to state it in 1 or 2 words, what do you think? What is the purpose of this scenario? Or is the purpose of the scenario clear? It says order test, right? The scenario name actually elaborates the rule, or it conveys the rule. And it says your order test. Is it testing the order? Order has been placed successfully. Think so, something is happening. search and order a pizza, right? That's something it's trying to do. So let's revisit this and see what all things are here. We begin with first we put some hard code, the search button, validate something, right? Now, if the application changes, if the recognition string changes, this scenario goes for a toss. And moreover, if they happen to convert some selection drop down into radio button, then again, has the functionality really changed? It's basically changing of UI and some DOM elements, and that's not what formulation or scenario writing is. Scenario purpose or scenario rule has to be unique. There has to be a single objective per scenario. This scenario is trying to do too much. If it was testing order, there are various possibilities that have not thought through for order validation. If it is a data entry scenario, then it has not thought through various ways in which who is allowed to enter rest of the information or who is not allowed, who or what are possibilities of validations when the data entry is done or when the selection is done or when the searching is done. This scenario is trying to do too much, and that's the reason it's a good automation case, but it is not a business scenario. So if you look at any application, when it is built, it's been thought through in a very modular fashion, right? Even the coding or the development team is going to write microservices in terms of smaller modules which are parallelly built or built by distributed teams. So if the development code is going to be further done in that manner, the business communication can be thought through in a much more business organized manner. And so is the test automation aspect, which would eventually come in. But scenario, does that mean that we should not have large scenarios? We should definitely have scenarios that cuts across different models. And that's exactly where the bifurcation comes. Building multiple different microservices, you need microservices specific granular scenarios, and then you need certain journey scenarios that cuts across the microservices in terms of one hop, two hop, and does the dependency validation of exactly what would you like to validate where the handshaking is happening. You are not going to test the granularity of a particular microservice in an end-to-end scenario. So what you otherwise follow for a test pyramid, there has to be similar follow-up for business pyramid. And that's where the beauty of into play. You define a feature file, one particular module, and then you elaborate scenarios in that module. And what you can do is you can define background. So there's a background keyword in Gherkin, which actually helps you get the context transparent, or it actually takes away a lot of detailing that you need to get to the context in a background, right? So if I have to come to search and filter, I need to log in, I need to navigate somewhere, and I need to do something, and I land into the, let's say, the product catalog search area, then all that detailing gets into the background, which need not be written again and again. What then defines is your particular scenario with correct scenario name, which is your rule, and the example that you have elaborated. So that brings in a lot of modularity to the scenario writing. Illustrative scenario, the granular scenario, and a journey. So illustrative scenario follows single rule. The granular, majority of it should be written for the individual components or microservices. Journey scenarios, they cut across microservices. They are slower to execute, but they have their own place. And these have to be validated to the point so you know what you are trying to churn across the dependency between two modules. There's block keywords, which are the outside context, how you organize your scenarios better. And what we have seen are the step keywords as to which actually define your example. This is of scenario writing. You can obviously study Gherkin syntax as well. There are many Gherkin writing tutorials, but the BDD philosophy is what is the core of this particular session that I'm doing. So scenarios is not equal to test case writing, and it has to take further the collaboration that the discovery has established. So the business readability of the scenario should never be compromised. I mandate my team members not to rewrite scenarios given to you by product team. That's a mandate. If you feel there is an automation necessity that you need certain variables to be passed from the scenario file, then you need to come back, approach, and only then take a consent as to how we can write the business scenario again in order to help test automation if there are any such dependencies. But the business context and the business readability has to be maintained. So here are very few, 6 principles rather. Scenarios should be in business language. It should have real data conditions. It should reveal the rule and the intent why that scenario exists, right? It has to be intention revealing. Similarly, all the essential details are only present, like background, right? Navigation and the enter first name, last name, email ID, phone number. This is not what you're trying to understand in terms of a rule of that operation, right? These are intermediary details which need not be written in the scenario. These you can very happily put in your step definition, add a JSON file that supports you with the data, or a faker class which will give you all this data. But the rule or the example has a business purpose to convey that when the user is added, it is enabled, or the person is enabled to put down an order or something like that, right? You have to convey the business part of it. And anything that does not contribute to the scenario, don't write it. Just focus on single rule per scenario. That's how we follow solid principles for code. These are basically the principles for scenario writing. A typical thumb. Given has to be written in past tense. When is generally the stimulus, the heart of the operation, and preferably write a single when. And in the journey scenarios, you may have to add certain conjunctions over there. Then has to be written with a should keyword, because you're trying to build the scenario in the grooming sessions, right? You're writing the business scenarios. It's a translation of your discovery. It is not a post facto event. You're writing it prior so that the product team, the automation team, the dev team, everybody is trying to understand what we are trying to build. Similarly, we don't write any additional, you need and conjunctions in given when then only when you're trying to put too much of information. Just like if you go to an ATM machine to get cash, all you want to see that the account has a balance. You're not going to say, I'm going to enter the PIN number and I've logged in with proper card and so on, right? So that is rule of thumb when you follow a quick look at the scenario. The example mapping that we had established, right? First time order with no previous history, and these are the two examples, right? So how do we write scenarios? Let's take the first one. First registration users should be eligible for discount of 20%. So when a new customer has signed up, and the discount policy, it is going to be implemented as some preference in the application, right? So if this policy is kept on, when a user places an order for $35, then they should receive 20% of time discount. So the context, action, outcome of your example has been translated into given when then, right? And the final order total should be $. I'll put down the which is for the first user with a cancelled order, right? Policy should be applied and they should proper order. So that's an example. In the interest of time, I'll move further.
audience and ponder. But like I said, on in this particular session will run and try to cover the basics and fundamentals. We can make best use of it in the Gen AI part of it. And maybe we can have a follow-up session where we ponder on the best practices with some use case, one of the domain-centric idea, which we go ahead elaborating into these three pillars and taking it ahead, right? So this is one example for the search criteria. Like if I want to search for a pizza by entering three words, then what are various business aspect when you that you want to validate in the user story to enable the search feature, right? That after three characters only you need to find. Then there can be uh, the contains part of it, that you enter the words and it gives you the correctly found non-existent pizzas and so on, right? So you have put down the business purpose of it over here. Now to the next part, automation part, and then when we do the Gen AI, we can take few questions if there are any questions in these part. Automation is incidental, and what I've seen is that teams do test automation first and then they apply BDD so that it is English like language and makes the automation self-explanatory. So that's not BDD. Yes, you're using a Gherkin tool and doing test automation, but it defeats the purpose and there's no ROI in terms of business behavior driven development that otherwise would have highlighted the whether you want to go ahead with the user story or you want to seal the user story to some extent because certain features or certain rules cannot be delivered and so on. Those kind of conversations don't remain there. Now, why do we need automation and around the scenarios that we have established? Because our feature files are going to remain common across various devices. Your outcomes and the discovery part are top of the pyramid, which always remain more or less constant as the product evolves. These files also evolve. But if you look at the application as you go down towards the code, whether it is your automation code or whether it is your application code, it keeps churning. There's a stack upgrade, there's a UI mashup upgrade, there's continuous change on the UI side, DOM element, recognition strings. Things keep changing at a much faster pace compared to the functionality being delivered, right? And that's where the beauty of BDD comes into play, because the specifications remain valid across the interfaces and the flow of business-centric keywords, the business vocabulary, right? What we have established in formulation now really takes the stage to hand over this vocabulary for API development, for interfaces development, and ensuring that each and every member uses it in their variable declaration and class. Now, let's look at the other perspective. When we looked at, I said there's a business pyramid, right? Just like you have a test pyramid. So the scenario information pyramid is the business pyramid where you have rules on the we were writing in the discovery. Then we elaborate and examples became we actually use these examples to make them play back against the application. Does that mean we cannot have additional automated scenarios? You should have an additional automated functional test automation inventory, but not each and every test automation script translates into your BDD. BDD are acceptance scenario. You can have a separate huge inventory, but there has to be an acceptance inventory which says that these functionalities are working fine. And that's the reason when you define top down elaboration of a story, from story to rule to examples and then the automation, you follow that structure and you see how the business vocabulary bloom out of it. Now you take this further in the step definition, you start applying your test API nomenclature using the DSL, implementation specific page objects, action classes that start elaborating your navigational aspect that is hidden behind the scenario. And finally, you truly assets that you were talking all the while till the time the application was not ready, right? So that's how you elaborate from discovery to formulation to automation. So it's maintainability in your automation code. But if you start doing it from automation to scenario writing to discovery, you have already delivered a wrong application, or you have delivered a defective application, or the test automation is defective and it doesn't maintain well, right? So let's take this example of Anurag, I'm running out. I've already consumed 1 hour, I guess. And
You can keep going, Ashwini. Right, it's completely fine if you keep going. I've asked permission if they want to extend the session. Right, a couple of folks have said that's okay.
Okay, cool. Right. So let's take this search menu example. So there was a search feature that needs to be developed, and we had written the discovery part of it and then the scenario. Now, what we'll do is we'll write the automation when the application is not ready, right? So how do we go about it? So pyramid that I just showed you, we begin from the feature file. Feature file will have that scenario. And then let me bring up the IDE here so I can just give me. Actually browse through the code first and then come to this pyramid. We'll simply. Okay, my screen is visible. You can see the IDE.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So we have this example, right? We have written the feature file. Now for this feature file, I'm going to have one step definition where, so for the folks who have not worked with Gherkin, every line of the feature file gets translated into step definition as an empty method. Okay. And in the step definition, then we have to call our automation methods so that we can actually do a playback from here. So if you look at our action classes, the catalog will have typical methods will enable us to search by name, size, price, and so on. Now these will be using rest of the automation part where, rest of the page classes and its methods so that we can have these as the business wrapper class. Correct. And then if you look at the page will have far more detailed information in terms of interacting with the elements, wherein we can actually get down to actually searching and getting into nitty-gritty operations, right? So this is how we go ahead elaborating the automation code. And then finally, we have the property files where we have housed all our recognition strings, right? So when we get to the step definition, if you look at the search pizza steps, you will find that exact translation of what we have written in the search file, right? Jane searches for the pizza. She should be able to find these words. And then finally, we validate that the correct thing has been found. And we start putting these APIs in our step definition. Now, why do we need so many different files to be defined in a particular manner? So let's look at this pyramid, right? So we started defining our details here as part of the feature file and scenarios. Then we definition. I can very well do it even if the application is not ready, right? Then we elaborate the methods that I want to call in order to make sure given when then can actually play back against the application which will be built. So I can very well say navigate to pizza catalog. I can define this method today because I understand the functionality. Then comes with folder, right? There's no implementation inside it. Comes that there are action classes, business wrappers, right? Page classes where we have defined nitty-gritty things. These can also be developed in the absence of application, right? Because I'm understanding the functionality. I can have wireframes for reference, and I know that these classes are going to come. Where do you actually interact with the application to put down the actual interaction points? It's in the property files, right? These can be empty and rest all functionality, rest all code, the test automation code can be built even when the application is not ready. All I'm going to do is in the property file, I'm going to say search underscore input is some placeholder because the application is not ready. I just have a wireframe. But rest all functionality, I can very well code today and integrate it with my step definition, make my scenario fail because the application does not exist. But my automation is ready. The day I get the first cut information of a running application, all I want to do is make some small tweaks to this property file, put down if at all there are one or two changes in the page classes. My business wrappers are going to take care of rest of the things. So there's a translation of the business vocabulary that we have built for this kind of deliverables to come up, right? And the maintainability that you get out of it is immense. Now, if you look at the dev team also, what dev team does, they are going to define their contracts exactly in the manner, the way we define our business wrappers. And then they are going to share those contracts with their peer teams so that each team can understand what is going to be the handshake. Is the implementation ready? No. There's business clarity, there's handshaking clarity, there's a business vocabulary, which both the dev and the test team can take further, keep their automation ready. That's where we get maintainability in the test automation if we follow BDD. So once we organize the code manner, we should be able to really get it working soon. Now, BDD can be applied at service level as well. At service level, what you want to do is put down those, right? So that, like, for example, access the web service by creating a new client and then retrieve the result and convert it into, let's say, pizza details object. So the web service matches the value, the scenario. That's how it can be practiced at web service level as well. Let's go down first. He goes ahead and translates into T. So if you have a class that has certain values in terms of, let's say, methods and attributes defined, and you know that I want to elaborate the behavior of these methods, then the tests can be written in a manner that actually elaborates the functionality. Like, can be more self-explanatory in the manner which converts your business definition. The method names need not be test underscore 123, test underscore null check, test underscore 0.1 check or whatever, or pop check or so. You name it and word it in a manner that actually gives the requirements of your method's implementation, why that method exists in that class. So this is the unit level translation where BDD morphs into the TDD manner. And for the code, that refactoring really takes the center stage if TDD is well practiced. Now we come to the last piece, that is, how do we leverage GenAI so that we can bring in the efficiency in writing scenarios, in writing test automation around it, but with the best practices of discovery and formulation and everything that we have learned. You will find this literature with ChatGPT, Claude, and everywhere that you need to give a proper input format and what you expect out of any of the GenAI, and you put those format as well, you will get the better. Over to, and then we'll see how discovery, formulation, and automation can be practiced. So let's say the first card that we will take is in order to fix an incorrect delivery address, as a client, I want to change the delivery address after the order has been placed. So the order has been placed, but the user wants to change the delivery address. Now I want to think of rules, examples, eventually scenarios, and then the test automation code which will help me play back those scenarios for this user story. How do we go about it? So we begin with the first part. So what I've done here, I've used Rahul Verma and Tariq King's what they have emphasized in multiple different conferences and sessions that they have taken, that make use of markdown format and structure your prompt. So elaborating and riding on that idea, I have used the markdown format to mention the best practices of discovery and formulation, what we have learned. So what did we learn in discovery? We have learned what is written in the mission statement. Generate rules and concrete examples with sample data to elaborate given user story using example mapping process that Matt Wien has elaborated. And the user story description of the user story that we have selected. What I'll do is I'll copy paste this prompt in the chat. Y'all can open your ChatGPT or Claude, your favorite GenAI, and copy paste this particular prompt and see for yourself as to what kind of example map it opens. So what we have given here is input tag. So there's absolute clarity that input to this prompt is that there's already a web application, which is pizza delivery application, and the user has placed the order and he wishes to change the delivery address. What do we want GenAI to do? Elaborate the rule, consider data examples, cover ideal, exceptional, and alternative flows. Not the test case writing, okay? It's about the business boundaries. And what is going to be the response format? We have to create a tree structure with each node on the card sticky, user story in the center, just like what we did in XLE Draw or what we did when we used the mind map, right? That will have the story, blue color cards, and then the green color cards, which elaborates examples. So let me just copy paste this prompt in the chat. Once again. I'll share, I think I've shared this Git repo also, so that you can get access to this information online. I'll copy this and paste it further. I can paste it in the chat here, right? One second. If it's going to be too elaborate, then Anurag, you help me. Is it reflected there in the chat?
Not yet, but let's just give it a second.
All right. I'll anyways clone this. It's already shared. I need to share the link.
Right. Also, after the session, we'll be sharing an email with the participants. You can receive all the resources from there.
Okay. Right. So when we run this prompt, we get a mind map. Right. If I run it in chat, it's out to be in this manner. If I run it against the Claude, it generates a mind map sort of thing. To session, let me just share my window. One sec. Okay. Elaborating, it gives a map like this. Okay. So we put this, then it generates the mind map. Start the mermaid and paste this mind map here in the code. Get this kind of a mind map. It's not given the tree structure that we saw, but mind map comes out to be in this manner. Something similar. Claude actually reflected it in a better fashion. So if I just, is it visible to you all? Given pretty much the story on the top, and then it is given one positive, one negative. It is properly elaborated with some good examples, real world data. So that's how it. In the interest of time, what I'll do, I'll go over the prompts quickly and then share these prompts with you all, and you can try it out. If at all you face any issues, can always reach out to me. So in this second prompt, what I've done is I have elaborated slightly on the mission statement, the discovery fundamentals that we saw, right? What is a rule? So I have elaborated here. A rule is a generic expression of how system should behave. Then what is an example and how it's going to write? I need context, action, and outcome clearly written in the example that GenAI is going to return back to me. Rest of the things remain the same. Because it throws a lot of information, I have written give me top 5 rules and top 3 examples for each rule, maintaining ideal, exceptional, and alternative flows. And then what is going to be the response format? I want a mermaid out of it. Right? So it returns us the example. Mind you, we are still in the discovery phase. So what I'm asking GenAI to develop is an example map. Right? Now we move on to generating scenarios from the example map. So what I'm telling GenAI is generate state-of-art Gherkin scenarios with relevant data assumptions for the image input. And the image input is the image which got generated in the mermaid or the image in the previous prompt. And now you can correlate it to the agentic workflows, right? The first agent should be the discovery agent, and then should be the formulation agent, and then should be the automation agent. And when you have that kind of an agentic workflow, it's going to give you much better return than some generic prompts that you do just by directly giving some keywords. Right? So use these data samples to denote the intended behavior, mention the data in single quotes and the data tables wherever necessary, and the scenario outline. So here we have the mission statement written as a paragraph, but there is a mission, state-of-art writing scenario. There is an input, there are steps what it needs to do, and there is an output which is very clearly specified. And fantastic results this found in Claude. In the interest of time, I'm not running it. I'm pretty sure for you also it's going to run the same the moment you give this prompt. And it actually considers the data table with some rich data and a much more business-centric use case, right? So that's just the discovery part. We go to generating scenario for this another user story. As a guest user, I can choose different toppings on my pan pizza. Yeah, so this is the prompt for the same. Slightly written in a different manner, wherein you have put the persona also. The persona is expert BDD or a business analyst and understands the formulation best practices. You have to generate the Gherkin, give the user story name, and then rest of the things remain the same. And the markdown has been elaborated to take the persona as well, right? So it map. 1 second, I have it here generated for it. No, it's the other one. Okay, it's in. Fair enough. So now we move to the last piece, which is automation. In case of automation, what we need to do is we need to apply the automation best practices on top of the information and the scenarios that we have generated, right? So here I can find out, like I can ask the scenario definition file that what sort of business classes or business wrappers will be needed to me so that I can go ahead and do automation. I can have that prompt, and this is which is very automation centric prompt when I have already defined my core classes. So define the pizza catalog action class, and then define the DOM level interaction inside the page class, make an assumption about the properties which are DOM elements, and finally put down the search pizza step for my search pizza input feature file. So I'm giving here the input as a search pizza feature file, right? Is given, it generates code much more closer to a valid code. It needs human intervention for sure, but at least you are not writing everything from scratch. You get better output in terms of assumptions that you make in the property file, and then you get better definitions in the rest of. Another one would be as an expert senior developer, and then the classes are following page object pattern, Java coding conventions, and Cucumber step definition. You want to give the scenario for which you want to generate the classes. Even this works well. So when you give this, and yeah, so we get the explanation also what it's trying to do. It's following clean architecture, solid pattern, rest of the things are applied when the definition starts coming up. So these files are all generated files, right? So that this session, what we have seen, we have gone over the basics of business alignment first as to how BDD basics and fundamentals help us align with the business thought process, right? The crux has to be collaboration and conversation, wherein the teams who have not seen the customer's place, they have not actually interacted in the absence of what we are trying to deliver as an application. They have not lived the life of the customer, right? You want them to empathize and understand the business context well before they actually touch and start writing the code. That's what you try to enable the teams with if you have these collaboration techniques handy. And mind you, these are all human interactions. And there's no AI coming into it. AI is coming to help us ponder on better edge cases. So when I said the discovery best practices come prepared with information that you want to put on the table when you're having the conversations, there you can come back with AI and understand what are possibilities within the context of this business. Am I understanding the business well? And then you are going to have much richer discussions and negotiations, which are much needed because within the bounds of resource constraints, time constraints, it's the MVP you're trying to carve out. Even within the context of a user story, there can be many more open items which may not be possible to be delivered within that boundary of your release. So what you want to do, you want to discuss that, okay, let's do these 4 must-have rules. Remaining 4 rules, what we are going to do, we are going to seal certain sections on the screen and enable this functionality once the first MVP is delivered. Right? Those kind of conversations will start getting enabled if there's a good culmination of AI in the discovery process and its translation into formulation and further down the documentation and automation, living documentation. Okay, so I think I've covered some of the references which have helped me understand start from scratch as a BDD practice, and then there's no one size fits all, right? You have to start somewhere, take some calls, try to evolve the process over a period of time, get into collaborative discussions, fine tune it, and then release by release, when you start applying it to user stories and then applying these best practices, I'm pretty sure it's going to give you the ROI in terms of better functionalities being delivered for sure. To say, yeah, thanks guys. I've pretty much gone beyond the scope time, and really apologies for that.
No problem at all, Ashwini. This was a really helpful session for us, for all of us. Right, and folks, like if you've enjoyed the session, you're still in the chat, you stayed back for half an hour extra. Thank you so much for that. We'll be sharing the resources with you really soon. Right. We, in the interest of time, we have like three questions from the user MB. Right. We'll be addressing them post the session, if that's all right with everyone. And we can share the answers over email as well, along with the resources. In the
Absolutely.
mean, thank you so much, Ashwini, for your time. Just one quick thing before I let everyone go. It will take about like 30 seconds. So we have we have our own online community. This community that we keep talking about in the test drive. Uh, like it's about on Discord. You can go ahead and join it. There's a feedback form as well for this session, right? That you can go ahead and check out. Right, so you should see it in the chat section, right, chat section soon. And a lot of people are appreciating the efforts you put in for the session. The effort was clearly
Thanks.
very visible.
Thank you so much.
Right. So we have a chat link, right? And is it visible to all of you? Just wanted to
Somehow,
check.
somehow I'm not able to see the chat because
It okay.
lost the
So,
screen.
folks, this should be on your screen right now. So there are two links. One is for the community. The other is for the feedback form. So you can go on Discord. Just search for us. Right, Sundar. We'll be uploading this on YouTube as well. Once it's edited, so you'll get the recording as well. So, folks, please go ahead. Your feedback will help us a lot. You can see it on screen as well now. Right, you can share your feedback. All right, folks. Thank you so much for your time today. To all of you, please do go ahead and share your feedback. It's on your screen, right? It helps us improve. I understand that there were some issues initially, right? We'll try to avoid those in the future as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll be ending the stream now. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day, everyone. Okay. Thank you so much for joining. Bye bye.